So welcome back to the last of our awareness videos on the 16 days against gender-based violence, especially against women and children, from St. Charles Parish again. I have with me three very well-known people in our parish. We have Fr.Tony, who's been parish priest for how many years now, Father?
4 years.
For 4 years. We have Deacon Mike Harrington. How many years have you been at the parish?
I've been here since 1968 with a short break at St. John's in North Riding, and I've been a deacon since for 15 years.
And then we have Deacon Patrick de la Roche.
And I'm the baby here. I've been here a parishioner at St. Charles for just over 30 years and a deacon for just over 4 years.
Great, and welcome. And really, we are really privileged to have these three people helping us with this endeavor. So, and I must just say though, when I did ask them, they all said to me, but I don't know anything about the topic. And I said, it doesn't matter, nor do we. I think the thing is here, is we have to realize that nobody knows everything about the topic. Violence is everywhere. The fact is, we have people crying out for help. And we have to acknowledge that this is a problem. So I think what we are going to have to look at is, why do we deny this? Why do we have this sense of denial? Why do we turn away? Why do we look at it and say, you know, not my monkey, not my circus, and we just ignore the whole thing? We'll see by the stats that this kind of violence is very high here in South Africa. So we have to become more of a relevant community and understand that there are people sitting in our very pews who are screaming silently for somebody to reach out to them for help. And that goes for the victims of violence as well as the perpetrators. So this is I hope we're going to get quite a lot out of our clergy. I think we will. And we have to realize that we have to face this and take our heads out of the sand. So I think the idea is to try and get a sense of what role the church could or should be playing when it comes to violence between couples, gender-based violence, children, etc. So I'm going to ask Deacon Patrick to kick off for us. And, you know, what is your thinking around this whole thing, Deacon?
Well, Marianne, we live in a violent society. We have the violence of poverty and economic disparity, the violence of war, violence of discrimination, the violence of crime, and so we can go on. Violence has many forms, many causes, and many victims, men as well as women, and children as well as adults. The thing about violence is that it dehumanizes, objectifies, and stifles hope. I understand that well over 80% of the victims of reported cases of non-lethal domestic violence are women. The 16 days of activism against violence on women and children brings into focus a certain violence in society that tragically many consider as private affair and therefore acceptable. Women of different social classes, races, age groups, and sexual orientation are vulnerable to violence perpetrated by men. It's deeply ingrained in societies and has serious impacts on women's health and well-being. We read and hear about this in the media and think that it's out there, and perhaps not in our church or in our very own parish. The church exists in society, and so it would be foolish of us to believe that we are immune on the inside. We have so often had to learn this the hard way in the church. So for me, it's important that both laity and clergy be part of the conversation. So I would like to thank you, Marianne, for kick-starting this conversation in our parish. The Bible confirms that brokenness and abuse in the home and society as a whole must be dealt with. our Lord calls us to be compassionate. This word comes from two Latin words meaning to suffer with. That is, to enter into the other's suffering.
Do you think many women particularly come to the church for help? And if so, how relevant is the church in their response to these people?
The church can help break the cycle, Marianne. Many abused women seek help first from the church because they see it as a safe place. Even if the abusers isolate them from other social contacts, they may still allow them to go to church. For the church to be relevant, the church must not only provide a space for worship, but needs to also be a place of refuge, providing emotional, spiritual, and physical support. So the response of the church in situations of domestic abuse really matters. In this story, we have to be the Good Samaritan. Pope Francis, in his apostolic letter, "You are the light of the world," calls for a continuous and profound conversion of hearts, attested by concrete and effective actions that involve everyone in a church. At stake is the full credibility of the gospel message and the effectiveness of the church's mission.
Thank you, Deacon Patrick. And I like what you said, that the church has to become a refuge for those who are struggling emotionally and spiritually and physically as well. So thank you very much for that. Deacon Mike, maybe we can come to you. Deacon Patrick spoke about, Pope Francis's apostolic letter and talking about the conversion of hearts. Now, we believe that for everyone, this is important for everybody in the church, male and female, not just for one particular group of people. But how much more when it comes to understanding woman in her true dignity as created by God, especially when we consider the high percentage of violence that is perpetrated against her?
I think in essence we need to look at the creation story. And you can imagine Adam, on God's instruction, naming all the animals. And like any person, he can't really relate to those animals. And then here, God puts him into a sleep and he wakes up to find this woman. And you can just sense his absolute delight in this creature that he sees straight away as bone from my bone, flesh from my flesh. In other words, equal to me, exactly what I am. And that's what makes that woman so special to Adam. Then, of course, we have to go back to the creation story. We are told that all persons are created equal in God's image and likeness. And this should mean all of us. There's no sense of dignity for a person who is abused. We need to understand we must all appreciate the other's dignity. And particularly, no one person owns another. Each one is an individual. And I'm sad to say how far we have fallen from that biblical story of creation. It is so beautiful. The other one that we men have used over the centuries is that St. Paul says women must be obedient to their husbands, or wives must be obedient to the husband. And this sort of gives man the right to dominate his wife. But that's not what St. Paul is saying. If we read properly, the husband must treat his wife as Christ treats his church. And that's how Christ treated his church. Am I prepared to sacrifice my life for my wife? By doing that, if I am that way prepared, I can understand my wife and all women, the true dignity they have. We need to also bear in mind that Christ's passion, death, and resurrection were for one purpose only, and that is to get us to heaven. Now, this is the God-given mission of every husband. He is obliged to work at getting his family to heaven. Now, the submission of the wife to the husband means literally that, submission. He has a mission and she has to support him in his mission. They should be a well-coordinated team of equals, driven by love of God and mutual love for each other. The answer to this pandemic is to help men to understand the dignity of women. And unless that happens, gender-based violence will continue. The problem is exacerbated in what I've said, that there's silence. Silence from the victims, silence from those who know of the abuse, and I must joke a little to say, and men are often responsible to address the situation. A bit like putting the fox in charge of the chicken coop. But in essence, that's what it's all about. We need to educate ourselves as human beings, and perhaps particularly as men, that all people have dignity and we must respect that. Putting an abuser into jail is not going to change anything. That's not going to help. We need to change our outlook. We need to go back to that creation story, at last from my flesh. That is so special, so magical, that Adam is absolutely enamored with this creature that God has created.
Thank you, Deacon Mike. Wow, I can hear your passion. It's awesome. And I can also hear people out there talking about this mission and the submission. You know, that's always been so misinterpreted, I think. I even hear it in my own work, where men throw this out, that she has to submit to me, and the violence creeps in there. So thank you for putting light on that as well. Fr.Tony, we're going to come to you now. You've heard our two deacons, and we've heard you in your homilies. You're always supporting families, couples, marriage. You know, that seems to be your passion as well. Is there anything you want to add to what the deacons have said here? Is there any word of hope, of encouragement you'd like to give couples? And I think particularly those couples who are planning on getting married. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would echo what our two deacons have said. And the important thing is communication, that we communicate with one another, and not also just thinking of ourselves, but thinking as a community, as a family. That's the important thing. As Deacon Patrick has said, there's so much violence in our world, in our communities. And what we need to do is build up community and build up family. But as I said, once again, it's all about communicating and also acknowledging that, yes, we all are sinners in one way or another. We all make mistakes, and none of us are perfect. And when we do make mistakes, we need to come and say, I'm sorry, and start afresh. That's what it's all about, starting afresh.
And Father, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What about, we have people who are crying, who are sitting in these pews and are really, as I said, the silent cry, where they feel they need to reach out, but they can't, or they want to, but they don't have the courage to do so. What words could you give those victims, children and all adults, but particularly women as well? I know they're sitting in our pews, struggling from all kinds of violence, be it emotional, physical, spiritual, sexual. What words of encouragement could you give them?
Words of encouragement I will give to our people. There are lots of societies and organizations within the church. So what you need to do is find out where the situation is and approach the person, approach the deacons, approach myself. And then we'll be able to assist and we'll be able to help you. That's the important thing is. So make use of what the church put forward, the various organizations, and we will accompany you and help you and assist you in various ways.
Thank you. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Deacon Patrick. Thank you, Deacon Mike. I trust you've all learned something from these three wonderful people in our parish. Again, we're going to put up the details. Please, if anybody needs any kind of help, this is an initiative by, as the Father said, a parish initiative by the Family Life and Marriage Desk. Do contact the parish. They'll put you onto the Family Life and Marriage Desk, and we will certainly do our best to, and give you resources and help you where we can. Thank you, and God bless.